Billy Collins was born on March 22, 1941 in Manhattan, New York. He was considered a late child because his parents did not have him until they were 39 years old. Billy Collins was born into his family as an only child, so his parents made him feel like he was the center of the universe. His mother, Catherine Collins, worked as a nurse, but when he was born, she stopped to raise him. Catherine Collins was very good at memorizing verses from different subjects, which she would recite to Billy, and that led to him loving words. Another factor in Billy Collins' life that led to him loving words and syllables was that he learned Latin responses through being an altar boy. He did not understand Latin, but he would listen to the syllables and memorize them. As a child, Billy watched a lot of cartoons, which triggered his imagination. The Warner Brothers cartoons influenced him the most. Cartoons influenced the humor in some of his poems. They gave him the ideas of objects changing shape and ideas of putting odd thoughts into them. Billy Collins attended Catholic schools growing up until he went off to get his doctorate degree. He earned a doctorate degree in romantic poetry at the University of California. From there he went on to being an English professor. And in the 1970s he wrote short counterculture-inspired poems for Rolling Stone magazine.
Billy Collins' poems lack much grounding in historical events. He wrote about personal experiences mostly. Every so often he covered a major event like 9/11, but not much. His poetry has been described as being suburban, domestic, and middle class. He wrote in ways that avoided autobiographical events. He liked to focus his writing on insignificant moments, like a stroll through a park or seeing neighbors.
And bewildering for him as I hold him in my arms in the small bathroom, balancing our weight on the shaky blue scale. But this is the way to weigh a dog, and easier than training him to sit obediently on one spot, with his tongue out, waiting for the cookie. With pencil and paper, I subtract my weight from our total to find out the remainder that is his. And I start to wonder if there is an analogy here. It could not have to do with my leaving you, though I never figured out what you amounted to, until I subtracted myself from our combination. You held me in your arms more than I held you, through all those awkward and bewildering months, and now we are both lost in strange and distant neighborhoods. The poem Weighing the Dog by Billy Collins is about a man weighing himself with his puppy and how these later contrast with his care for the dog to another's care for the man. The poem discusses how the man is holding the dog in his arms and is weighing himself with the dog and subtracting his weight to find out the weight of the dog. This then compares with having the man being held by a loved one and then having that man subtract himself or leaving the relationship with that person. The poem is divided into two parts. The beginning, lines 1 through 9, just talks about the dog and the owner's care for him. The ending, lines 10 through 15, explains the care that the owner received from another. Collins repeats words such as awkward and bewildering, lines 1 and 14, in the beginning and in the end of the poem to signify the same feelings that both the puppy and its owner felt. Collins also contrasted I hold him in my arms, line 2, with you held me in your arms, line 13, to explain the care that he had and which he now gives to the puppy. Another example being I subtract my weight, line 7, with I subtracted myself, line 12, to explain first off his loss of weight to find the weight of the puppy to his loss of the one whom he cared about. Weighing the dog shows how we never really take into appreciation what we have until we lose it or we do something to get our own personal gain. The owner held and cared for the dog in his arms, but the dog only felt awkward and waited for his treat. The owner's significant other cared more for him than he did for her. She held him more than he held her, and he never thought much about it until he lost her. This could show that the owner depended on someone else being there for him and holding him and caring for him. Because of him being dependent, he did not pay much attention to the other person, so he lost them. In return, he now has a puppy that he holds and cares for just as his significant other did with him. He got the puppy to make up for his past mistakes and for fear of losing someone again.
The way the dog trots out the front door every morning, without a hat or an umbrella, without any money, or the keys to her doghouse, never fails to fill the saucer of my heart with milky admiration. Who provides a finer example of a life without encumbrance? Thoreau in his curtainless hut, with a single plate, a single spoon. Gandhi with his staff and his holy diapers. Off she goes into the material world with nothing but her brown coat and her modest blue collar, following only her wet nose. The twin portrayals of her steady breathing followed only by the plume of her tail. If only she did not shove the cat aside every morning and eat all his food. What a model of self-containment she would be. What a paragon of earthly detachment. If only she were not so eager for a rub behind the ears, so acrobatic in her welcomes. If only I were not her god. The poem Dharma by Billy Collins is about how dogs live life simply and that they do not care about the umbrellas or hats. While the dog can go out every day without needing material goods, she can still be loved by many. The second stanza asks if there are better examples of lives sans encumbrance, such as that of Thoreau or Gandhi. In the third stanza, Collins elaborates on how the dog can pass through the material world without being affected by the materialistic influences, as she just makes do with what she has on her back. Although in the final stanza the downfalls of the dog's behavior that keep her from being a model of self-containment are brought to light, she still fights with the cat every morning, demands the attention of others to provide her gratification, and is owned and led by someone else.
As young as I look, I am growing older, faster than he. 7-1 is the ratio they tend to say. Whatever the number, I will pass him one day and take the lead, the way I do on our walks in the woods. And if this ever manages to cross his mind, it would be the sweetest shadow I have ever cast on snow or grass. The poem, A Dog on His Master by Billy Collins, is about how a dog will one day pass his master and will always remember the walks they took. He uses juxtaposition in lines 6-8 when he says, I will pass him one day and take the lead, the way I do in our walks in the woods. These lines are relating to the theory of how dogs age faster than humans do, making the point that the dog will one day take the lead in age over his owner. The end of the poem is suggesting that if the owner ever realized that the dog would one day pass him, it would be a prideful accomplishment for him. Collins has the dog say, it would be the sweetest shadow I have ever cast on snow or grass. This is meaning that the dog left his mark with the owner and that there will always be a part of him in his owner's life.
Collins' use of everyday scenarios in his poetry is a way for him to connect with his audience and show that life is poetic. He is the best poet overall because he writes from the perspective that is not dissimilar from you and I. He focuses the subjects of his poems on things that are easily related to so that they give a more down-to-earth feel. His use of imagination intrigues readers and spices up the idea of trivial events happening day to day. The direction that he intends for his poems to take in the reader's mind is clear and intentional, but the meaning that follows is much deeper than appears on the surface. The feeling that comes with each of his poems brings to light how wondrous life is.